Hello, all. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our lovely, lovely panelists. So we'll start off with my twin and better half, the first ever Youth Poet Laureate of the United States. She's a Harvard graduate. She is called the next great figure of poetry in the US. She's spoken at the Library of Congress, United Nations, We Day, venues across the country. She also met with Michelle Obama at the White House, conducted a library tour, published her own book of poetry called The One for Whom Food is Not Enough. Zolee Griggs, who is a fashion blogger, singer, social media powerhouse, and actress known for her performances in Hulu's Wu-Tang and American Saga, Disney Channel's Corey in the House. I had to bring that up. Brian.
Yes. Corey in the house.
With Anne Hathaway and Kate Hudson. She also recently started her own community Grab and Go in Inglewood, which everyone should support.
Awesome.
Basically for families and individuals in need. So you can donate essentials and toiletries. And she has been empowering young women through her Girl to Woman initiative. And that brings together young women, girls to discuss career paths, relationships, beauty, health and wellness, all that good stuff. Jaylen Barron is the star of Netflix's original series, Rein, which I'm actually a fan of, and Kelsey, who I know is watching right now, we've watched that many of times together. She's also on 12 Forever. She's had recurring roles on Showtime's Shameless, Disney Channel's Good Luck Charlie, the list goes on. And she's also the founder of the vegan and cruelty-free luxury lash company, Bouger Lashes. Blair Imani is a critically acclaimed historian, outspoken advocate, and public speaker. She's the author of 2 historical books, Modern Her Story, Stories of Women and Non-Binary People, Rewriting History, as well as Making Our Way Home, The Great Migration and the Black American Dream. And she uses her presence on social media through Instagram to educate audiences. And for those of you who do not know, Wonder Ventures is an LA-based VC fund that invests in pre-seed startups. And I've been interning here for the past couple of months. And I remember back in, I think it was July, I was talking with my boss, Dustin Rosen, about how Black women are the fastest growing demographic of entrepreneurs in the US, yet we still struggle for visibility and funding. And we've seen similar discouraging patterns across Hollywood and within the artistic space. So from there, we started to kind of develop this idea of how about I just bring together some of my sheroes and inspirations and have a conversation about how they're challenging the narrative and boldly blazing the path forward. So I've kind of talked about all the amazing things that you beautiful women are doing. What I want to know is, does your current occupation or lifestyle differ from the one that you'd originally envisioned for yourself? And how was that initial vision shaped or challenged by outside forces, whether that be societal, communal, familial? And a part 2 to that question, if you can answer, is how were you then empowered to fight against the preconceived narrative and get in front of your destiny?
I never thought I would be doing this. For folks who don't know, hi, welcome. And thank you all so much for putting this together. This is so essential. Yeah. You know, with the Breonna Taylor decision coming just an hour or so before we got together, I was so excited that we could come together as Black women to be able to have a dialogue. So I'm really grateful for that and for divine timing in that way. As far as the career question, yeah, so today I am an influencer, and a lot of folks consider that to be somebody who uses social media to like influence things in a certain way. Usually that is a capitalistic way, telling people what to buy, etc. But it's just a tool, you know. The field is so expansive, and so I'm using education in order to influence folks to know better and do better. And I was talking earlier today with my friend about how I knew this job didn't exist when I was a kid. Yeah, there were like celebrities, and then there were regular people, and there was no really in between except for reality stars. And today, so many people can just take up a platform and start to work the algorithm, work the networks, and start to, you know, flourish into their own path. And it's been really interesting because now through social media, I can do it so rapidly. And that's just so mind-boggling to me. As far as it being the societal pressures aspect, I was always under the impression that I had to pick, that I either was going to do something beauty and fashion related or do something education related. Not true at all, but that's so much of what we were fed as young people. Like the idea that we could have somebody who was savvy, fashion forward, and then also very successful and educated is something that has been increasingly prominent. It's not necessarily new, people been doing it, but I always felt like, oh, you know, because I'm not 5'7", I can't model. Because I, you know, I'm not conventionally attractive, I can't model. When I started wearing hijab, I for sure thought that I would not be doing any type of modeling. And right at that time, it became poppin' to photograph photograph hijabis. So again, divine timing has really come through. And the other thing that's come through for me is realizing that you don't need to wait for your moment. You know, like there's so many people who have been on the cutting edge. There's something called the innovation curve where maybe every time you speak up, people don't hear it. And sometimes because of anti-Blackness and misogyny or misogynoir, shout out to Moya Bailey on that one. And sometimes it's because you're so ahead of the curve. We can't, you know, extract those two things. So do you, and do you well, because everything I was made fun of for, you know, like growing up, being eccentric, talking too fast. I have a series called Smarter in Seconds now where fast talking gets the point across, okay? Like so many different things. Those are the things that I am known for and what people come to me for. So it's just this mind, this you know, cognitive dissonance of feeling like I can have it all, I can do it all, and I'm doing me. And I'm not going to wait for people to catch up to it. But once people do catch up to it, it's a great thing because now folks will be able to be in your space and your energy.
I mean, I can jump on that train. I mean, I loved everything that Blair said. I also want to give a quick applause. I'm a proud sister for Gabrielle, or as I call her, Gigi, for putting this all together and getting the baddest leaders I know together. So thank you so much for that, and to Wonder Ventures for having us. This is funny because, like I said, Gabrielle is my sister. So like I'm talking about my life. I feel like, you know, we both come at it with this background that we know. We've lived together, obviously. But for me, I'm a spoken word poet, as was mentioned. I've performed in front of thousands and millions. And I can tell you growing up, that wasn't something that I expected from myself, particularly because I had a speech impediment. So speaking up was very difficult. I had an auditory processing disorder. So the idea of like doing spoken word poetry was just like beyond the realm, both professionally, because I didn't know that was even a career to begin with. But even if I had known, I wouldn't have thought it was a career that was accessible to someone like me, who was Black, who was female, who was low income, and who also had this disability which hindered her ability to speak. But as I began writing, I found it was a really liberating way of self-expression, and also a very intimate, personal way in which I could put my thoughts and ideas on the page. And for once in my life, I wouldn't be judged by the ways in which my voice sounded. And as I grew older, it actually became to be that spoken word became, who is unloading a truck? Sorry, behind my...
I think it might be over here.
Okay, never mind. I was like, Decepticon, like, what's behind me? Anyways, fun fact, spoken word became an arena of speech pathology for me, and that I started using it as a tool to teach myself how to speak in the way that I wanted to. So for example, one of the sounds that was most difficult for me to say was the R sound, which is, I think, really similar for a lot of immigrants as well coming to the United States. I watched a lot of videos as a child of like Asian immigrants coming to the US trying to distinguish between L and R, which is something that I struggled with. Not an immigrant, I'm a Black woman, born and raised here, but that was still something that took me years to discover. So to kind of learn that sound, I would listen to like soundtracks like Hamilton, which has, you know, lines like Aaron Burr, sir, permission to state my case as you were, sir. So it's packed with R's, and listening to those spoken word artists and those performers would help me figure out that sound. I would also listen to the audio tapes of Harry Potter, which has a lot of R's, Harry Potter, Hermione, Hogwarts, Dumbledore, things like that. So learning literature and learning rap and rhythm and rhyme was a real way for me not only to overcome my speech impediment, but build a career for myself that I hadn't necessarily known about before and not seen. So I'm eternally grateful for that.
Last year, I was really successful in my career, and you know, I always knew it would happen, but you don't see when it's going to happen. You don't know when. And so everything that I prayed for and worked for came to fruition. It was beautiful. It was monumental. I worked my ass off last year, and it was crazy because this year is a complete 180.
Right.
And
360.
So I don't know, 360 would mean I'd be where I'm at last year.
Yeah.
We're in a complete different zone, but like for me, I think this year was a different kind of awakening, and it was a focus for me to not only worry about my career, but also the humanitarian part, because you know, when you're busy focusing on your career, at least for me, I was busy focusing on it. I didn't have much time to do other things. I literally had to pack up my life here in Los Angeles and move to another state. So like I was in another world completely. So this year I felt like it was up to me to go back to my roots and like bring out the humanitarian and do what I can for the community. It's like, okay, I've been given a platform, I've been given power, I've been, you know, what can I do with the privilege that I have and the blessings that I have, and how can I spread those among other people? And so that's what I really learned and honed this year, because I can't really do much career-wise. My career involves a lot of other people, and because of this pandemic, you can't be around a lot of people. So I figured, how can I touch people, help people, and, you know, be around people in a good way, but not putting them or myself in harm's way.
Right.
So, you know, things like the grab and go, things like my friend puts on a vigil once a month, and so we go and we talk about how we can help in the community and things like that. And I also wanted to like zone in on not worrying about the world's issues, because with so much information that we get all the time, you get really overwhelmed and feel like you want to save the world or that you can. And sometimes you have to decompress and just be like, what can I do right here within my community? You know, like that really helps, and it makes me feel less overwhelmed as well, seeing what I can do within my own community that I grew up in with people that I know and things like that, you know. So that's been my focus this year, and I'm still going to reach my goals and obtain my goals. Thankfully, I'm still able to, you know, audition and things like that, but I felt like this year was time for me to step out of myself and what I wanted to focus on career-wise, and to give to others, and like, how can I get back on that path? So I'm still thankful for it. It's just, you know, 180.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm completely on the same wavelength as Zolee. You know,
It's okay, girl.
Optimus Prime.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So my whole goal, my entire life, everything I wanted to do is acting. And so fortunately, I was blessed enough to be able to have that opportunity. And, you know, just like Zolee was saying, COVID stopped everything, you know, auditions in person. And, you know, we have to do these things called self-tapes now, to where it's better to be in the room with everybody. But what I can say during this time, you know, with, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement and COVID, is that it really made me search within myself, because I didn't have something that was just for me to focus on, which, you know, acting, you just focus on yourself all the time. But I feel like because of this, I was able to grow and search within myself and want to reach out more. Like Zolee was saying, you know, become more of a humanitarian, worry more about my community, worry more about what's going on in the world, who's going to be in charge, and just how we all as Black women can help uplift each other. And instead of it being a competition, and instead of it being, you know, a separate type of path, we can actually all boost each other up through social media, which is why I'm so proud to be in front of all of you guys. You guys are all amazing. Gabrielle, Amanda, Zolee, Blair, you all are doing it, and I look up to you guys so much. Zolee, like, your Hulu Wu-Tang, that's amazing. You worked.
Thank you, girl. You too.
It's what you deserve. It's what you deserve. And Gabrielle, the same thing, you know, and Amanda, the same thing. Just, I'm so proud to be able to sit here and be able to discuss these types of topics with you guys. And, you know, luckily, I feel like, unfortunately, there was a lot of loss during this pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement, but I feel like there was also a lot of personal gain with Black people and with a community. So yeah, so that's all I have to say about that. It's just like, it is 180. It's not the same thing as last year. It's hard out in these streets trying to.
I kind of want to piggyback on what Jaylen and Zolee have talked about in terms of Black Lives Matter and using your platform for change. I am sure that like the four of you are very acutely aware of this pattern of like a proliferation of hashtags and reposts that we usually see following the circulation of graphic displays of police brutality. for example, George Floyd. So we see everyone posting the black square, and there's this surge in conversation. And then, a couple weeks go by, or even a couple days, and the wave dies down. Everyone goes back to their regular scheduled programming, business as usual. But something I've found incredibly admirable when it comes to U4, and I recognize this both as a voluntary choice, but also something that's, I think, compulsory, is that you are constantly infusing political and social justice oriented messages in your digital content and your art, regardless of whether it's a part of the dominant conversation, regardless of whether it's deemed trend worthy at the time. And in doing that, like, you're constantly having to educate those around you, whether it be your followers, your colleagues, your peers, your families. It's a full-time job psychologically to always have to educate people. And so my question to you is, do you sometimes feel unfairly pressured to speak or to educate when sometimes you just want to absorb? Or on the inverse side of that, have you ever felt pressured to remain silent in fear of rocking the boat or stunting your career mobility?
There is a little bit of both. There's the fear of like, okay, like it's going to be too political. But then as a Black person, you have to remember, like, no, my life mattering should not be political. And do I really want to be hired by a corporation who thinks Black Lives Matters is political? So you do feel a certain pressure. I mean, at least I do, to make sure that your followers stay updated on topics, because the more followers you have, obviously, the more minds that you're able to reach and hopefully expand and change. So definitely that pressure, for sure. I don't know, Zolee, do you have anything?
I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I'm like, it's real life. Like, social media to me isn't that, I'm not gonna say it's not that big of a deal because I know the impact that it has. But personally, I'm like, this is who I am. This is something that is a part of me. I can't change it. I've always been outspoken. I've always talked about what I want to talk about. So it's either you're going to be a part of this also and you're going to want to join in, or it's just simply not for you. I remember when the protests really started, I posted a video on my Instagram, and it was, my grandmother freaked out because she felt like I was doing she said I was going to incite a war, which I told her, you are being a bit dramatic. But basically I was telling people, like, if you're going to go out and protest, please make sure you have protection. Please make sure you have gear. Like, if you're going to have meetings, please make sure that you don't bring your phones, like, have it just amongst you and your private friends and who you were discussing, because it was serious. And I'm like, and these are tactics that they did back in the 50s and the 60s when we were having meetings in churches and things like that. And so I was going back to what I saw my ancestors doing and what previous generations had did, and I was just implementing that in today's time. And so she just warned me that this is, America is bigger than us, bigger than social media. So sometimes you have to think outside of just, I know you want to do what's great for the greater good, but that was just me being me. And I'm like, look, like Jaylen said, if that's going to hinder like a job, or a company doesn't want to work with me, I don't want to work with them. I don't want to, it wouldn't align for me in the first place to work with anybody who wouldn't agree, because this isn't like a trending topic that's cute and funny and like a capitalist, like, we're gonna make money. Like, no, I'm a Black woman. I was raised by Black women. My family's Black. Like, this is who I am, what we are. So if you can't accept me in my entirety, then we just have no business together. And like, this is just a fundamental thing. So I mean, I'm always going to stand up for what I think, and I'm always going to share what I think. And if you agree, that's great. If you don't, maybe we can talk about it, or maybe we don't have to. That's fine. I feel like everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and I respect it. So.
I'm just like, they're doing all the work. I'm just like, I'm like a participant, like watching at this point. Like, I definitely agree with that. I think having served as like inaugural Youth Poet Laureate, what that typically means is that you work with federal institutions, and federal institutions get their funding from the federal government. And so when there's a change in power, for example, from the Obama administration to the Trump administration, that is taken into account financially. And what I mean by that is, for example, if I actually, this happened, this is not an if, this is not a hypothetical. Early in college, I was invited to open up the literary season at the Library of Congress, and I got a lot of pushback at a poem that I was planning on reciting called In This Place, an American Lyric, because I was told it was too political. And what I've kind of learned now and kind of the tenure of my career is that political is now used as a code word for against the status quo, or something that makes people uncomfortable. Prior, a lot of people thought of political as meaning partisan, meaning you're speaking out for a specific candidate, you're speaking out for a specific party. But now political is kind of a buzzword, hyper energized, that means you are saying or speaking to an issue that is going to make some audience members uncomfortable, specifically those members that fund this event, this institution, this organization. And I don't think that is a sufficient claim to stop that from being said. If anything, that proves that whatever was on the table needs to be given a microphone. Particularly this poem that I was going to read, it talked about DACA, which had just been rescinded. It was talking about my experience coming from California, the friends who I know who are undocumented, and what this meant in their lives. And I was told to redact that part of my poem because we might end up going against the Trump administration if I performed it. So I did take out the word DACA from the poem, actually. But what I did subversively is I amped up the sound DACA in the poem. So what that means is there's several lines like a DACA ship, undocumented, things that while the administrators were reading the poem, you don't see that necessarily on paper, but when it's transformed into a spoken word poem, the sound DACA is actually the most, I would say, intensified and frequent sound utilized in the poem. And so I think as an artist, you're always having to find ways to kind of subvert expectations and kind of work around that. I mean, it creates a lot of kind of tough decisions. If I have an opportunity to be in a room and have a microphone, I'd rather find a way to say what I want to say creatively and still get at that political thought and still get at that sociological instinct, even if the people who thought they had opened the gates to me believed that I was doing something that was non-incendiary. So that's something that I kind of have to navigate as a poet. And I feel actually quite lucky with the poetic art form because I can do that. I can play around. I can be like, you didn't know I was rhyming DACA the whole time until I started rapping it, but I did. So I have to find a way in which in every single space to try to bring that there and bring it into the room.
Love that, because that doesn't just speak to like your own ingenuity, but also this legacy of Black folks doing double speak in a way that the status quo has denied us, whether that's through speaking patois, through speaking Black American English, so many different ways. So yes, I love that. I think too, a part of the whole like self-censoring or being censored by external factors is also sometimes to protect people. It's whether that's, you know, conforming to respectability for trying to trying to protect yourself in that way. Sometimes it's having, you know, information that you can't elevate in a way. Speaking specifically, when I worked, you know, I don't even think I can say which place, but at one of the places I worked, I wasn't able to specifically disclose something that I felt like could be very helpful because it was more harmful to talk about it externally than it was to try to solve it internally, because it would have had so many different stipulations. And there's just so many different ways that we can speak up. And if you do have the opportunity to, you can't squander it. You know, the thing for me, I think how I've structured my platform is it's an educational platform, first and foremost. I'm a historian, I'm an author, I'm an educator, so you're gonna get knowledge from me. You're not necessarily coming to my page for an escape all the time, but you are coming to my page to like learn about things in an accessible manner. And so with that, I've had a lot more growth, whereas other people who maybe their page is just differently structured because we're allowed to do different things. Not every Black person has to be educating everybody about racism 24/7. Those folks have had a decrease in engagement, whereas I've had like explosive growth overnight. Sorry, my dogs are in the background doing the most. But anyway, so it's been really interesting to see. But it's also been interesting how people conflate what is and is not action. there's this perception that if something is too structured, it's not action. But then you have the Black Panther Party's 10-point program, and you have the fact that the Black Panther Party would show up in black turtlenecks, perfectly symmetrical afros, would show up on point. They didn't roll out of bed that way. Do you know how much time goes into picking an afro to be perfectly symmetrical front and back and behind? That's a lot of work, you know? And so just because it's strategic, just because it's planned, just because it's organized, doesn't mean that it's inauthentic, that it's not good for the movement. That is all part of organizing. But we also have to look at where we get the strength from, because the strength has to come from knowing that we mobilized people, not necessarily always that we won. And I'm saying this particularly around the Breonna Taylor decision that just came down. You know, I don't call it the justice system because that's a total misnomer and a lie. It's the court system. It's the criminalization system. And it was just decided that, in fact, no, the cops that killed Breonna Taylor will not be going to jail, that there will not be forward action to prevent this from happening through this decision, that her neighbors, they were acknowledged, but that a Black woman who was murdered because of police misconduct, because of recklessness, because of our police state, will not be acknowledged. If you are deriving all of your strength from the moments of when we win, you're gonna be exhausted real quick. You're gonna be burnt out, because we're often not winning in the ways that society defines winning. But sometimes winning is awakening people to a reality that we have been experiencing for centuries, to move them forward, for them to understand that it's not enough just to say Black Lives Matter while you're also silencing Black women. It's not enough just to say I care about this if you're not doing anything about it. It's not enough just to post a Black square if you're not gonna hire any Black people, okay? So we have to look at the wins as the forward momentum, as a forward action. We can't just look at it as this change, this policy change, because during the civil rights movement, which we all like to look at as, you know, definitive proof of things moving forward, there were so many things that did not happen, that were denied, that were dreams deferred. To quote Lil Langston Hughes, because I know Amanda's on here. There was just so many things that did not pan out in the way that we wanted them to. And I tell young people this too, especially as we go into this election. You know, I worked at Planned Parenthood in 2016 when Trump won. And there was just a mourning, you know, a mourning on that morning, to use a little double entendre. But if we don't prepare ourselves with the understanding that winning doesn't always look like a binary, then we're going to get burnt out at just increased rates. Sometimes the momentum is that yesterday was National Voter Registration Day. My friends, who were some of the most outspoken people against the structure of voting, were the ones doing voter registration drives. That's a win. And we haven't even had the election yet. So we have to look at these different things and hold strong onto those and promote those, because it encourages people. My vote doesn't matter. Well, look at all these different elections where 50 votes made a difference, where one vote made a difference, where one person showing up made a difference. You can make that difference. And then it's also saying to people, it's not just one way. It's these 35 different ways. It's these 3,500 different ways, so that everybody can get in where they fit in to make a move for justice. Because if we all try to do the same thing, we ain't gonna get anywhere.
I'll say, yeah, people definitely told me to run for president. I'm like, hell no.
Right.
I mean, Amanda is running.
When we were younger, you actually didn't want me to run.
I still don't. I'm sorry.
She was like, we can't live a normal life, you know.
So I was also gonna say is, do you guys ever feel like, you know, as Black people, period, Black women, that there is a certain pressure to put on you to post like, oh, this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm doing, or else it's not happening, you know, because there's so many things that people do behind the scenes that, and then your followers are like, what do you haven't posted about this, you haven't said anything about that. It's like, you don't even know what's happening behind the scenes.
Exactly.
What's going on. And I always have found that extremely frustrating, because it's like, man, just because it's not in your face does not mean it's not happening.
Right.
You know? You don't know the work that we're doing. You don't know who we're reaching out to. Just because, you know, you do things out of love and you do things off the strength. You do it because you want to, you know, and I get, you know, putting it out there and stuff like that. But I was just wondering if you guys ever had that same experience.
I definitely feel that. I think particularly because I try to occupy a really kind of like socio-political sphere with my poetry. But there's definitely the pressure, anxiety around the performativity of advocacy, that it has to be something that's documentable specifically through kind of the social media 6x6 square. And if you're doing work that kind of transcends that space, or work that is not easily contained to that type of form of publicity, then it's disqualified, then it's negated. And for me, something I try to practice in my life, which complicates this, is I try to pause before a post. That those moments when I feel kind of the most incendiary urge to post something immediately, that I have to say something, that it has to be public, that it has to be known, those are the moments in which I try to give myself more space to breathe and to wait and then to act. And then the post needs to be a type of declaration of that act that I take. For example, for me, I find that when I post, it kind of sends basically like a hormone to my brain saying, okay, you're good, you're done, you did your work for today. And like my entire demeanor, my posture, my energy changes, because that is considered like the checkbox for the day by my subconscious, that I posted, thus I acted. And for me, pausing before a post, it's uncomfortable. People keep knocking on my door. I'm sorry, I'm gonna, and they can hear me, but I'm gonna keep going anyway. So I'm gonna keep going, I'm gonna check the door. But actually, I'm gonna go check who's at the door. Somebody. So
I get this often, and especially around the protests in the beginning of June, where people are like, oh, well, you think you're an activist, you talk about And so I decided to do something which we in the Black community call demonstrating receipts, to show some receipts. And so whenever I tell my students to cite their work, I'm like, where are your receipts, kids? Let's do it. And so in my case, I was arrested in Baton Rouge, Louisiana in 2016 during the protests around Alton Sterling. And it was the most traumatic experience of my life. And I say that as a survivor of multiple different types of violence. And I say that because it was so permeating throughout my life, where they used weaponized sound, where they use physical strength, they use intimidation, they use surveillance just to mentally go to war with us as well as physically. And so people started to post this picture. It's so frustrating because when you are arrested publicly and there are cameras, there is this idea that you're detached from yourself. I call it the decapitation of self. And you are removed from who you are. And for me, it was doubly difficult because my scream was being used as B-roll in front of the news stories, and was being used, and I was in a Public Enemy music video, and then I couldn't get tickets. It was ridiculous. And so the way that we decapitate people from their work and what they do is so violent as well. So it was these multiple forms of trauma where I heard police cars and I was taken back to that moment. And instead of allowing that to continue, which honestly I have very little control over how other people use and view my images, I decided for my own purposes to take that back, to post it and say, not only will you not tell me that I don't do the work, but let me tell you why I can't go to protest, because it is so traumatic for me. Let me tell you about the PTSD that I have. Let me tell you about all the ways that there are to fight for justice in addition to being in the streets, but teaching people, educating people to totally change this dynamic that if you are not protest hopping during a pandemic, then you're not doing the work. You shouldn't be. There's so many ways, you're just being a mass spreader. And there's so many ways to fight for justice, whether that's in the legal system, outside of it, being on the streets, being at home, tracking people, supporting people, dropping off food, providing resources, using your visibility to raise awareness. There are so many different ways. And so when people try to say, oh, I didn't see you do this, you're not doing the work. In Islam, we have these things called intentions. And you speak your intentions. When you give a speech, you say Bismillah in the name of Allah, which is to help God, direct what you're saying. And only Allah knows your intentions. Only God knows your intentions. And we can spend some time, calling out BS, which I think is, healthy, especially when it comes to accountability. But at the end of the day, I don't know why you post something. You know that. I can't say that because you posted a black square, you're a surface level, performative, whatever. I can't say that if you haven't done anything else, because you're showing where the receipts, So it's very nuanced, but there has to be that space for people to just be and to live, and for it not to be on display all the time, because that's not realistic.
I just want to, that was beautifully said. I want to update everybody that it was not a serial killer who rang my doorbell.
They were dropping off a package, so I'm alive and well. This is not my ghost. And I just wanted to finish what I said because I felt bad, like stopping off mid-sentence and like leaping out of the Zoom. But kind of speaking to what Blair so beautifully put it, again, kind of that pressure in which to make external your intentions, even if they were better served by being kept intimate and personal. And so for me, what the pause before the post does is energizes me for that. And if I choose to post, then that's great. But I can tell you those moments in which I waited, those moments in which I breathed and watched and learned and questioned, those are when the most powerful moments happen and when I find my inner strength against. So for example, with like the death of RBG recently, I was just gutted and I saw so many posts online and I felt, a pressure to post a square of her image or things like that, which I ended up doing. But I waited, and during that afternoon in which I was mourning, I double checked my registration status. I texted tons of friends asking if they were registered to vote. I updated myself on like LA rules for voting and things like that so I could inform other people who were asking me. And so, like I said, that breath and moment of watching and observing actually helped me find my own inner fortitude, because in listening to that silence is where I found my voice saying, I felt so alone and I felt so in pain after this death of a woman who I looked up to. But by kind of watching and being in that moment, I was able to then find other tools I hadn't thought about in the face of adversity.
I'm going to, this kind of leads into my final question, and then I'll open it up for the Q&A. So you all kind of just now spoke about people not really seeing the work that's being done in between the posts. I think not only that, but people also don't see failure, I think, in social media in general, which is very interesting considering some of the most celebrated humans today had to fail on their way to the top, or they were rejected. So Oprah, she was fired from her first TV job for being too emotionally invested in her subjects. Sidney Poitier was told to be a dishwasher at a casting audition.
Martin Luther King got a C in public speaking in college.
So, like all those people, you are wading through profoundly precarious and cutthroat fields and industries. So my question is, what was the biggest or most pivotal rejection that you had to face, and how did you find the strength to allow it to propel you forward?
Ooh.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oof. Oh man.
I can go.
Great.
Mostly I'm trying to deliberate because there's one that involves you, Gabrielle, actually, that I don't think we've ever really talked about. So this will be interesting. Sister stuff going down. But there was, and I think Gigi's probably like already like marinated and like done her like psychological work on this, and I've like only arrived at it now, so bear with me. But one failure I had is there was like a scholarship program that I was really passionate about for the arts. And I remember I applied in like every single category that they had for writing, poetry, novel writing, songwriting, yada, 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 yada. And I never placed, ever. And I think I got like honorable mention for novel writing. And I was like, I'm not even a novel writer, I'm a poet. And I remember like using that as fuel. And I spent like the next year like working so hard on my writing, getting mentorship, doing programs, reading after school, things like that. I was like, I'm going to place in something for writing. And a year goes by and I apply and I still don't get any recognition. And Gabrielle applies in filmmaking and she gets national recognition. Obviously, I was very happy for her. She deserves it. What she submitted was a phenomenal work of art, and anyone who didn't agree with that had just lost their mind. So I was very happy for her. But at the same time, I was like, I've now invested like 2 years into getting this. And it wasn't almost embarrassing. It was embarrassing because at that point, I was Youth Poet Laureate of the West. So it was like, I am a representative for the entire Western region of my country in a form of writing. And that still hasn't been validated by this high school scholarship in any way, shape, or form. But it was a really good, and also because I had spent so long trying to apply, my time had basically run up. I couldn't keep applying because I'd reached the time limit. So it's like, okay, great. My ego is crushed. But what it taught me is, one, to celebrate my sister in times in which she gets the recognition that she deserves and to not feel belittled by that, but energized. But also to recognize that my excellence lives outside of the title. Whether or not I'm Youth Poet Laureate, whether or not I'm given that award, I know my light and I know what I'm capable of. And it is not up to someone who's external to decide, but for me to categorize that for my own and for my life. And so I kind of just continued what I was doing. And what was really phenomenal, I can tell you kind of the other chapters of the story, is every single time, this was like multiple years, like I mentioned, through high school, every single time that I was rejected from getting an award from this program, they would contact me months after the program and say, you know what, we heard from a lot of staff members and people who worked with us and got to meet you. And we realize, you know, your skills. So we're actually going to give you this other scholarship outside of the application process. That happened every single time, where I wouldn't get whatever I wanted, but I would keep working, keep in contact, and like their eyes would be open and they'll kind of be like, how did I miss this? And so that's kind of the way I try to live my life, which is, if you don't hear from me, you're going to hear about me and recognize.
Ooh. Mine is really similar, so I'll just answer super briefly. The last award I got for public speaking was in 5th grade, and that irritates me because that's what I do for a living. And it's funny because I am critically acclaimed, but I'm not award winning. Yeah. And it's taught me that sometimes awards are dictated by who has access. And sometimes when you do get an award, when you end on one of those 100 people lists, it doesn't mean a lot, because I ended up on a particular 100 people list, not gonna name names, even though I could, but whatever. And it was frustrating because when it came time to talk about my book, when my book came out, they would not accept any pitches. So it was kind of like, what's the point of featuring me in this way, other than visibility, if you're not willing to help me advance my actual work and not just have me be there as a token because y'all needed a Muslim person to fill this spot. And so it's frustrating, but constantly having to deal with the realization that the validation you are looking for has to come from within, not from outside, especially because outside and giving it is very difficult. But I feel like in the long run, it is healthy. At least that's how I decided to look at it, because what else am I gonna do? Because if you don't have the choice of getting your validation from an external factor and you have to get it from within, then when there are no awards, when the attention stops, when the visibility stops, you're left with yourself and hopefully a more contented version of yourself. So I've looked at it as a blessing, even though it is highly annoying. But it's one of those things where it's like, is that why I'm even doing it? And the answer is no. What I am looking for, like there's one thing to end up on a bestsellers list, which is great because it promotes sales, which, fills your pocket once you earn out your advance and all that jazz. But it's another thing when somebody holds up a picture with your book, or hears one of your poems, or identifies with one of your characters, or loves one of your films and feels seen, and that changes the trajectory of their life. That is so much more worthy and worth it than getting on a list. And so that's how I've started to formulate things. And I've had to come to that conclusion, because if I was drowning in awards, I would probably still feel like that's the, hooray. But if there was an award season that I didn't make it into, then I'd probably start to feel insecure. So I've had to deal with that insecurity on the front end, which I think is going to serve me in the long run.
Definitely in the industry with acting, you face rejection so much. Like, it's more times than not. And, you really have to know yourself and work on your mental health, because these casting directors and some producers or whatever, they'll tell you something and it's going to stick in your head. No matter how many times they're telling you how good of a job you're doing, that one no it's horrible. It just last week it happened to me, and I was on hold for a certain show, and nobody can tell me anything. I thought I was going to get it and that was it, right? Sorry. I thought I was going to get it and that was it. So I end up not getting it. And before, when I would be on hold for something, it would be, a couple days, I'd be in my bed, I'd be crying, I'd be upset, I'd be feeling sorry for myself. But then I realized, I was like, okay, it's no reflection of me. It just wasn't for me. And what do I need to do to change my pattern? What do I need to do for the next time I'm going to get a yes? What do I need to do to become better? And this realization just happened last week. So instead of me being upset, I was like, okay, I can take this as a learning lesson. What do I need to do different? And that made me feel 10 times better. I had to look at myself in the mirror, recognize what I need to work on and what I need to change, what I need to be better at. And here I am, not in bed, not upset, and able to grow from the experience, you know? And Zolee, I don't know if you're able to relate to it or anything, but it's like, you know, that feeling you get in your stomach, it's like they like stab you in your heart. It's horrible. It's like a heartbreak, you know? And it's your career. With acting, we don't know what we're gonna get next. We don't know who's gonna like us next. And I don't know, so Zolee.
Girl, no, I feel you. Jaylen and I have like been in audition rooms since we were little girls. And so hearing rejection as a little girl, especially when this is something that you want to do and you see other young women out there doing it, it can really take a toll on your self-conscious and on your self-esteem. There we go, on your self-esteem. And so, you know, hearing it very young, you edit, like now that I'm 23, I'm used to it, you know. I think that it makes me have thick skin, and so I'm used to hearing the no, and I'm more amazed when I hear the yes or when I hear the progression of moving forward. But I think what was interesting for me as far as rejection was in high school in my senior year, because everybody, including my family and friends and teachers and administrators, all, you know, they're like, it's college time. It's time for you to go to college. It's time for you to apply and everything like that. And my whole life, I've never even really thought about college. My dad went to USC. He is the USC advocate, loves USC. And I've always just wanted to act, like, and that's what I thought would propel me forward in my life. And so I did what everybody else wanted to do. I listened to my family and teachers and everything, and I applied to 8 different schools. And that was where rejection, it hit me the hardest, because I didn't get into any of the schools. And so even though it wasn't something that I really wanted to do, I was applying in the world of theater. And so that was like a really big hard hitter for me, because I go to auditions and hear no all the time, and it doesn't really affect me. But when I go to apply to schools in the world of acting, I heard no from these prestigious schools 8 times. And it was like a wake-up call to me. It was like, should I even be doing this? Like, am I even talented enough, or is this, you know, for me, so on and so forth. But I am thankful for that rejection, because I don't think it was no, you shouldn't be doing this. I took it as a no, this isn't for you, or this isn't true to your path. Because like I said, I was doing something that everybody else wanted me to do, you know. I had never even thought much about it. And I'm not saying that other people shouldn't, like, if that is your path, please do so, you know, you will feel your calling. But for me, it wasn't. And so I'm appreciative of that experience, and I'm glad that that it happened to me, and it was able to, you know, I was able to see it for what it was. It's not a no, it's just no, this isn't for you. So I was able to switch paths and, you know, go on into what honored me and what made me happy, and you know, propelled me into what I'm doing today. So I'm appreciative of rejection. It helps me with, you know, get thicker skin, and I don't take it as a no. I take it as a not right now, or, you know, when one door closes, 2 more will open up. So it's okay. It's a learning process.
From Andres Lopez: how do each of you practice self-care in a time of such unrest? Do you meditate, or do you make time in your day to get away from the constant noise of the news, social media, etc.?
I have like 30 minutes where I just sit down or I stand up if I've been sitting all day. Because like right after this, I'm doing a book talk with one of my friends, Arvin Amadi, and it's really great because I feel like I can help my platform together with other people, and it's also therapeutic, and I enjoy doing it. But even something like, you know, I did a photo shoot and it was like all day, and you would think standing in front of a camera and taking pictures is not that difficult, but it's very active. You know, you have to get in your poses, you have to be on, you have to be energetic. So many things take energy, and sometimes it's just the mental attention of having to focus and not being able to just like zone out and stare into space. So I try to sit outside for like 30 minutes a day, which seems so minor, but I cherish it, because when I was working in an office, that's when I started doing it. When I was working at Planned Parenthood, you'd walk into the office and you wouldn't leave till you left until it was dark out. And so I would just try to find one of those little grassy areas, like, you know, New York, they have all these different parks that are literally just like a corner. You can barely see it, you know, and you just go and you sit there, and you don't breathe in the air too much because it's New York and it doesn't smell that good. But I'm in LA now. So, you know, just being able to take a moment is so good. And it costs $0, because when we talk about self-care, sometimes it becomes very much like, what products are you using, which, you know, valid forms of self-care exist. You know, I also love painting my nails, and I use Olive and June because they're woman-owned and ethical. But that you also have to do stuff that doesn't require you to expend any energy, any money, just to be with yourself and absorb the events of the day.
I also meditate and do yoga, and I love that Blair mentioned going outside, because that's what I think came to, that's what I noticed the most this year. When the lockdown first started, I was in the house, of course, for probably like a month straight. And then I realized, like, oh my God, my mental health is deteriorating. Like, I haven't seen the sun. I haven't gone outside. So definitely just going outside, going for a walk, going for a hike, and just being one with the outside world. I mean, of course, it's good to stay off your phone, whatever, but even if it's listening to music, I love to listen to music, be outside. I play with my dog, and I cook a lot. That has been my biggest self-care.
Yes.
New recipes and just cooking like crazy. So that's been a lot of fun for me. So doing things that honor myself and like things that, you know, I maybe couldn't do because I was too busy before. So it's been fun.
I just relate to the cooking because Ratatouille is my life. I probably watch that film like once every hour. So I got the music playing. I'm like tossing on my garlic. I'm like, I'm a rat who just wants to be a chef. But for me, one of the ways that I practice self-care is by being aware of the language in which I'm talking to myself throughout the day. Meaning I find myself using a lot of normative statements to monitor myself. Like, you should be exercising, or you should be writing, or you should be, you know, answering these emails. And that should judgmentality is something that I don't want to occupy my brain space during the day. So I changed those shoulds and focus it on the wants. I want to write because that is my calling. I want to cook because I need to eat and it's actually really fun. I want to take a walk because I get that sunlight. And so kind of monitoring the ways in which my own kind of internal diatribe or rhetoric is either feeding or negating the positive energy in my life. And even like writing those affirmations down and repeating them. Some of them are simple things like, I will be okay if I don't get what I want. This too shall pass. You know, I am in control, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So using kind of what I call word mantras to like recenter and reroute myself. I think especially I live alone now. And so like, it's only me and you and me here. Me like Jekyll and Hyde. And so like I get to choose who I'm living with. And the person I want to live with is my best self, who's like listening, giving me space and like pumping me up instead of like knocking me down.
All right, I'm gonna go into the next question. Us from Patrick Burns. What can allies like myself do to help?
Listen. Just to keep it simple, I just feel like listening is always the number one thing. Listening to what someone is telling you or how you can help, and then also maybe not being defensive. Not that you are, I'm not sure, I don't know who you are, but I've seen a lot of the times when I'm trying to educate somebody or talk with somebody, even if it's, I have a, like, you know, just friends or whoever, people get defensive because they think you are talking directly to them and pointing the finger at them. And it's like, I'm not trying to attack or anything like that, but to take yourself out of, just to take yourself out of the equation for a second and to, if you can, listen and have empathy with who, you know, is speaking to you. Yeah, keep it simple.
Oh, I would have to say as well, like, educate your peers. If you want to be a good ally, don't be afraid to check your family members or check, you know, your friends. That's super important. You could be the best ally you want. You could be shouting Black Lives Matters forever, but if you're at home and you have racist family members and you're letting them talk, you are not an ally. just because, oh, it's my family, you know, I don't want to say anything, then you're not for Black Lives Matter, then you're not an ally, because you need to not be afraid to let people know. Right. And I think that's also a good way to be an ally, is educate your family.
Mm-hmm. Because your family is not going to listen to me, they're going to listen to you.
Right.
You have the most direct access to them, and you know what makes them tick and what makes them listen. So more so me, you know, it's, you are the best person.
Yeah, and they're gonna relate to somebody who looks like them. So who's the best person to educate them? You know what I mean? Just, that's how you could be an ally.
I did a post today, and it says, let's see, you don't have to get called out to do better. You can just do better. And how revolutionary is that? Like, if you only do better when there's drama, do you really want to do better? Like, if you are the type of kid, you know, remember when you were a kid, and the only time you did your homework was when your mom was yelling at you were trying to avoid your mom yelling at you. You weren't trying to do your homework. You know, let's be real. Like, are you cleaning your room because you want to live in a clean space? Or are you cleaning your room because your mom's telling you to clean your room, you know, or your guardian, or your parent, or your grandma, your auntie, whatever. And so my thing is, do your own research. Don't let it get to a point where you have to get called out. Make it, you know, very apparent that you are somebody who listens, you know. Recently, I did a post and I was talking about anti-Semitism, and I hyphenated anti-Semitism. If you don't know, anti-Semitism is actually one word, because if you hyphenated it, then it makes it seem as though Semitism is something that describes something other than language. It can be used to describe language, but when it describes people, it actually reinforces anti-Jewish ideology. I didn't know that. Once I learned it, I was like, cool, thanks for the info. I will do another post, delete that one, repost it, and then also do a lesson about that same thing that I just explained now about not being hyphenated. So it became an opportunity to learn. That also makes it clear to people that I'm not an educator who thinks she knows everything, because nobody does. Why are we pretending? I just learned, like, earlier this year, I learned the word reify, which is to take something abstract and to make it concrete. Use it in all different applications. I also talked about the word bucolic to talk about cottagecore and that, you know, internet phenomenon. That just means something pastoral and something positive about country living. I make it clear that we don't know all the words. We don't know all the things. We are not Google. And if we were, what a headache that would be. So it's about being so upfront, being so humble. And humble doesn't mean you don't think you're great at the same time. You can be confident and humble at the same time. But it's when somebody says, hey, when you talk about RBG, make sure that you don't use phrases like rest in peace, because in Judaism and some Jewish beliefs and traditions, there isn't the same belief in the afterlife as there is in Christian or Muslim traditions. So instead say, may her memory be a blessing, or may her memory be a revolution. It's things like this. It's not saying, oh, I want to mourn her how I want. It's not about you at all. And so it's really understanding that, owning that, and also coming from the mindset that this isn't work that needs to get done because of the sake of work. It's an opportunity to be more compassionate, empathetic, understanding human beings for the sake of one another. We can't unlive the events of June. We cannot unlive the events of 2020. Those people who passed from COVID or police violence or at those protests aren't coming back, you know? So we have to honor their memories. We have to honor their contributions and make our own contributions, because there's nothing else to do but that. So we might as well get on it.
Again, I'm going to add my own kind of 2 cents. I really do think allyship is being able to take a seat so that others can stand. And I mean, I'll just use even this project as an example. I kind of came to my boss about it, and this is very much an autonomous endeavor, and I'm very thankful for that. Wonder didn't tell me to say this or anything, but I was very grateful to be able to be like, you know what, this is something that I'm passionate about. I want to put it together. This wasn't really a part of what I came on this internship to do. And so thank you to Dustin and Abba for really just being there to lift me up. It was really all about me and my voice shining. And they were like, we're here to support you wherever you need it. And then to give an example of something that's not allyship, excuse me, I always bring up this example. Amanda, you might remember this. Zolee, you might. I'm not sure if this was when you were still.
Oh boy!
Oh goodness! Let's do it.
Basically, I remember one time at lunch, this one kid, like a year below, comes up to me and a couple of my like Black female friends, and he's like, you know, I just feel really terrible about everything that's going on right now. This was like, with all the stuff around like Eric Garner was happening. And he's like, you know, I want to speak about this at our like town hall at our school assembly. So we're like, okay, you know, we kind of went into it very naive. And so we're all sitting there, you know, our whole school, and he comes on stage, he brings us up with him and kind of has us stand behind him. So this white guy standing in front of us, he's got like 5, you know, Black people right behind him. He's like, you know, guys, I just feel really bad about what's happening to Black people right now. We need to take a stand. Like, it's not okay. And then he just kind of leaves, and we're standing there like, okay, that was it. And we, you know, left the stage really having no idea what was going on, what was the purpose of it, and just feeling incredibly objectified. Right. And that's an example of someone, you know, his idea of allyship was, well, let me stand in front of these people rather than standing beside them or just standing behind them, I think is really what it really is.
Yeah. I remember that, which is why I did a double take. It was so bad. It was so bad.
I don't think I was there for that one. I
didn't know that. I wasn't on stage for that.
No, you weren't. Yeah, I know you were on stage. I don't know if I want to out them, but yeah, it put us in a really weird position.
Yeah,
I'm not
don't do that.
Stage in front of my school, but why am I standing up here? So yeah, so
that's performative allyship for sure.
Ornamental.
There you go. This one is from Deborah Hawkenhole. Yes, please speak more on the multiple interdisciplinary areas that our passions flow into. So important to know that there are multiple lanes for all of us.
Absolutely. I mean, just think about a visual, you know, those cartoons where people try to walk through the same doorway. You can't do it, you know? And so it's figuring out, okay, well, maybe I go through this exit, or maybe I wait, you know? The phrase I like to use is that if we look at justice like a potluck, and we understand, my mom just like walked in super loud, sorry about that. If we look at justice like a potluck, and you trying to bring macaroni and cheese, and you have no dairy, no cheese, no alternatives in your house, you don't have macaroni noodles in your house, you don't have no eggs, you don't have an oven, why are you volunteering to bring the mac and cheese when right there you have some freshly caught tuna, you have some excellent celery, you have herbs, you have spices, bring a tuna salad. Don't try to bring mac and cheese. Let Dolores from down the street, who's been bringing the mac and cheese for the past 10 years, bring the mac and cheese. And you bring your tuna salad and you be great. And you don't put raisins in potato salad. And so it's that thing where you have to understand that do what you do and do it well. You know, I do not play music. I do not sing. So why would I try to show up at somebody's, you know, wedding and sing for them? It's not going to go well, you know, but maybe I could give them a history about the institution of marriage if they're interested in that, you know? And so it's one of those things where put yourself into context. Really understand the fact that there is a place for everybody for injustice, because we are all affected by injustice. You could be the most archetypically, you know, privileged person in the world, and you're still going to have a system of oppression, you know, impacting you. When people find out that I'm Black, bisexual, Muslim, a woman, they go, oh man, it must be so hard. It's like, yeah, but I also have class privilege. I also have health privilege. I have able privilege. I have lighter skin privilege. You know, these are things that influence who I am as a whole person. It doesn't mean that they cancel each other out. It just means that that's who I am as a whole person. And so we have to understand that framework and then operate accordingly. Because if I try to, you know, argue somebody's legal defense case and I don't have a law degree, I'm not only letting them down, I'm setting myself up to fail. So don't do that in the context of justice or at all.
I wanted to speak, I mean, that was great, beautifully said. Also on kind of the idea of like a multidisciplinary life. That's just something that I relate to. When I first went to Harvard and I went to concentrate in sociology, I remember kind of the shock of the administrators looking at me and they were like, this isn't the English department. I was like, I know. But like there was this idea that because I had been doing poetry and writing all my life, that was the thing that I was going to study in college. In fact, I went and I got my degree in sociology, cum laude, if I may brag for one moment, with my invisible hair flip. And I also got a citation in Spanish. So not only did I not get a degree in English, I actually got it in another language. And for me, I had a lot of people saying, well, you know, aren't you afraid that you won't be able to kind of like work on your writing while you're there? And I'm like, sociology informs my writing because it makes me a better thinker, a better scholar, and a better person, because then I understand the history that I stand upon. And I wouldn't be the poet today if I had been afraid to learn from other disciplines. I think it's really what helps. I think in any art form, any career, having that type of access to different types of thinking, creativity, critical inquiry will make you all the stronger of whatever you want to be. And so I would say encourage yourself to explore, even if other people are not.
The next one is from Jody Madler. Can each person share an anecdote of a win or a transformed perspective resulting from your work? Blair, I know you got this.
I'm like, just because I think, because I'm slightly older than y'all, but one thing that happened that I was really proud of, and again, this is why we have to understand wins differently. Because sometimes when you look at like movies, especially Disney Channel, original movie from my childhood, it's like, yeah, you get paraded, everybody cheers you on, confetti, it's the end of the movie, amazing Smash Mouth soundtrack. Like, that's not how it is. Sometimes the win is just knowing that you made a difference and knowing that quietly, and then telling other people about it right now. So we did this protest at Louisiana State University, myself, Xander Shea Brown, Shameka Shoemake, and some other folks who were organizing there in Louisiana. And the police had sent out an alert that said, basically, be on the lookout, like alleged robbery, black man in a hoodie. It's like, okay, well, in a city like Baton Rouge, where it's more than 50% black folks, it's a majority black city, and it's cold, what are you doing? You're criminalizing every black person who has sense enough to wear a proper attire for outdoors, And so we wanted to subvert this. And we knew that it wasn't a situation where the administration was going to be amenable to that, because why would they have done that in the first place? They have excellent sociology there. They have excellent political science there. They know that shouldn't work. It was an issue of profiling and racism. So what we instead did was enlisted the communications school to write press releases, to send those press releases to news outlets so the news outlets could come be present at the protest. We had the art and design students who had contacts in the industry get in contact with Hanes to send us hoodies, black hoodies. Then we got a bunch of different performing art students to create these posters that said he fit the description, and get a variety of black men in hoodies from all different shade ranges, sizes, abilities, sexual orientations, etc., to come together and hold that sign in front of those cameras. And were we ever acknowledged by the administration? No. Were they diverting campus tours around us? Yes. Did that information end up on the front page of so many different papers with the alumni? And did we make sure that influential alumni were alerted to that stuff? Yes. Did the policy change? Also, yes. Were we acknowledged? No. But the next suspect description that went out was way more descriptive. It didn't even mention race, because you can't identify somebody's race from their phenotype. That's like eugenicist. That's ridiculous, It said dark-complected black male on a bicycle, police en route, no need for attention. And they had told us that the reason why they used that profiling language was because of space. Let me tell you how long that other description alert was. It was not a space issue. It was a concern issue. It was a racism issue. And so I'm so proud of that, because it's like a case study in how this worked and how embarrassing the institution, acknowledging how messed up and how ineffective this work was, kind of employing the whole toolkit of direct action, enlisting people from different departments and everything to make the forward thing action. It worked. We were never acknowledged, and we probably never will be. But that's a story that I can hold with me, and I have evidence that it changed, because there was a harmful description, our action, and then a better description that went out. And of course, that's not the end of the work, but that was right at the tail end of my degree program there. And I was so excited by it, but it was also a reminder that we have to know what the work looks like for ourselves, what wins look like for ourselves. And we can't expect these oppressive institutions to pat us on the back for making their lives hell. We can't expect that. So it has to come from within, and that will also strengthen your organizing contacts. So that was like a great one.
Gabrielle, would you mind repeating the question one more time, please?
Yes. Sorry, I'm like scrolling through all these questions in here.
It was, can you think about a win or a transformative moment that happened from your work?
Got it.
All the good memory in the womb.
Thank you, Amanda and Gabrielle. Thank you. I'm not ready. I'm thinking. Sorry.
Jaylen, do you got that? Do you have an idea of a win or a moment transformation that happened because of your work?
Yeah, I'd have to definitely say after I was done filming Free Rein, I had realized that I didn't utilize what I was given, like what I was blessed. And I feel like I took advantage of the position that I was in, and I didn't do enough with it when I had it. So Free Rein, it ended. We had 3 seasons. I don't think we're getting a 4th season. And I could say that the transformative period was after that. Was, after like it died down, after like, we won the Emmy, all of that. After that, I was like, what did I do? What did I do? What can I do more of, And then I realized I prayed on, I was like, I just need another opportunity. And then that way I could reach out to more people. I could do more even on set. I could educate more people on set. I could, you know, if I'm given the opportunity to have another platform. So I guess after Free Rein is when I had that transformative period of, okay, look at what you had and you didn't do what you needed to do with it. So, you know, and I grew from that, and it sucks that I had to learn it that way, but I'm glad that I learned it, you know, being 19 years old rather than, you know, being 30 years old. You know, I'm glad that I had that opportunity. So, and then again last week, you know, when I didn't get the job, that was a transformative period for me. So yeah, just it's a lot of self-reflection. It's a lot of having to dig deep within yourself and pull out all of the ugly, so that way you can grow. But you know, it's a diamond in the rough. It's all good. It's okay. We're growing. We're evolving. You know, and not to be so hard on ourselves. We're all extremely young. We have so much more to do, and we have so much more opportunity. And you know, yeah, that's my transformative period. That's all I got.
I think mine was to stop being afraid, and I was okay with being comfortable. When I was 19 as well, I was really afraid to take acting classes because it would put me in a space that was new. I was in front of, you know, 30 to 40-year-olds who have been doing this their whole lives as well, but they're older, they're professional, and they have a range of, you know, just acting degrees and things like that. And I was the only young person. And so what was transformative for me was to just simply do it and to not be afraid, and to not let my fear hold me back, because it's like, you're never going to learn if you're always in a comfortable space, and you're never going to grow, and you're never going to achieve what you want, which was simply just booking something. So I was just appreciative that I had my support of my manager and my mom and dad, just to say, you know, do it. Like, you know, it's great that you're talented and everything, but you have to put in the work. It's not just going to be given to you. So I'm just thankful for that uncomfortable moment, because now when I face uncomfortable moments and realizations like that, I'm like, cool, you know what? You got to do it for the greater good. Like, you're never going to get to that next step if you're constantly here and it feels good. So go out, go feel uncomfortable, and then you will thank yourself later.
Yep. Hallelujah.
Sing it, girl.
So next up, Kennedy Hill. Shout out to UCLA, class of 2020. So she has she has two questions. One is for me. That's nice. Talk about, I guess I didn't officially introduce myself, give my accomplishments. So yes, graduated from UCLA School of Film and Television. What have I done? I have interned at Ava DuVernay's independent distribution company called Array. I was also at Tom's for a summer, as well as Scooter Braun projects. Directed a documentary for Amazon Fire TV, did a LinkedIn national campaign, and that's kind of the main picture. But yeah, and then I joined Wonder. I really wanted to know more about just the world of business and, you know, gaining capital and all that stuff. And was very lucky that they kind of took me in. I knew absolutely nothing and just kind of had to learn as much as I could about startups right before the interview. I don't think they know this, but it's been such an educational experience. That kind of goes back to the earlier question about just like trying as many things as you want to. Don't feel like you have to confine yourself within a particular field, and go out and grab opportunities for yourself. So next part of Kennedy's question is, what resources or people did you lean on to progress in the uncharted waters of turning your passion into an economically viable career?
For me, it's Color Me Courtney, at Color Me Courtney. Follow her immediately. I met her randomly, like she was in a commercial for Microsoft, and then I saw her like on a red carpet, and I was like, you're from the commercial. And that sparked a friendship. Because if you know me, you know that I talk to everybody. I think that's how I became friends with Amanda, and then later with Gabrielle. And so just open yourself up to opportunities, because you never know when things are going to come through. Like yesterday, literally, my stylist for a shoot that I did was a guy who I had a 2-hour conversation with on an Amtrak train from New York to DC in 2017. And I saw him again. So it's really everybody. It's not just people who you think are going to be like advantageous to you because they're in a higher position than you. Right. Sometimes it's laterally. Sometimes it's just from unexpected endeavors. But Color Me Courtney, she so I had explosive growth overnight in June. I went from 50,000 followers to like 100-something thousand. Now I'm at 200-something thousand. And she immediately was just like, Blair, do not change what you're doing. Keep doing it. It's the folks who swoop in, who jump in with you and say, hey, you just landed this audition. You just got this contract. You just got this show. Let me help. Like, not in an overbearing way, like saying you can't do it, but I can see that you need a team and I'm here to bunker with you. And that's the folks that really change the dynamic. So Color Me Courtney, and then Feminista Jones, who she has a book called Reclaiming Our Space, which I highly recommend everybody get to really understand how Black women have been doing this advocacy work on different platforms. But it's just the education and the constant open door of knowing that if I'm being bullied or if I'm being attacked or if I just don't know something, that these people are here for me. And I reciprocate that. It's not just a, hey, let me transactionally ask you for something. It's, hey, how are you doing, friends? You're my friend first. And how can we build together at the same time? I think that's the biggest thing with mentorship, is that it becomes transactional instead of an actual person relationship.
I also think, one, it becomes transactional, but also becomes like one directional. So I think often when we think about mentorship, it's like, what can you do for me? And particularly when I'm talking to young women who are trying to kind of access contacts, and like, you have so much more resources and power and energy than you yet realize that could be helpful to this person. So what I used to do when I would be at a conference or things like that is, one, exactly kind of what Blair was saying, is one, treat people as people first, not as kind of an axis on your like success trajectory, because that data is just going to be off and also just very deodorized and sanitized, and it's not going to feel human or organic. So one, like, I don't let myself ask anyone for anything unless I like know their birth date. I know how many kids they have, if they have them, what their names are and things like that. Like, I get to that level first. I'm like, I really want to know. I want to be able to ask how your grandma is doing. Like, I want to be on that level. But also I begin the relationship with offering something of myself. One, you have to be careful with that because you don't want to like run yourself into the ground. But instead of, writing an email that says, hey, I see you're at a woman development firm, can you like get me in there? It's like, oh, you're doing this work that's really exciting. I know tons of young women who are incredible leaders due to the work I do. Would it be okay if I sent you over a list that might help you in like narrowing down the fellows or something like that? But like I was saying, often young women, we underestimate the type of power that we have. And so what ends up happening is we end up asking and begging for scraps without realizing that we have this full platter that we can be offering to the world. And so instead of like minimizing your position with a mentor, I would say begin it on equal footing. They might know more, have more experience, or be older, have actual taxes that they're paying, yada, 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 yada. But you, just by being you, are offering something to that partnership, and you're offering potential. And so I'd say begin it at kind of that site eye level. So don't rob yourself of your own power.
The best resources are the people that that are directly in front of you. People constantly ask like, oh, how can I, meet up with dope people to do like my own movies and films and things like that? Like, do you have any contacts for me? I'm like, the best thing you can do is to reach out to your friends and family who also want to do that, create the dope project, and then just put it out there. Somebody and the right people will see it, whatever it is, and then you have genuine connections and resources, and you're working with people who in your community, and that way everybody eats, and you're not going to get used, you're not going to, stifled because you are working with like an industry, something, whatever. Those people will come when you get there, but until then, and even when you do get there, still continue to use the people who because there is like so much talent among us, and like people who you don't even think of. So just use the people who like, and there's already a connection there. Period.
So I'm like crazy stalker. So I'm just this is a great segue. This is a photo that I don't know who took. One of us in 2015, where me and my sister first met Jaylen. Me and my sister also first met Zolee like 2006. Met Blair like a few years ago. But that is to say, us all here on the panel, we are a living example of what it means to find people in your life who are genuine, honest,
loving, and whose power comes from them being them, and keeping up those relationships and keeping up those, contacts. That is where your true power lies. Sisterhood, not exactly spelled with CIS, but I think there's some real strength in that. And so I think people always like, how do we get a manager? How do we get an agent? Like when I had those questions in like high school, I was like texting Zolee, when I have a question about film or entertainment, or I have to pitch something, like I'm asking Gabrielle. And so, like I said, or like Blair actually said, it doesn't have to be lateral or diagonal, like it can be horizontal. Do we have our Snoop photo, Blair?
Yes!
Yes!
Amazing.
Me, Gabrielle, and Blair, we saw Snoop outside of his van, like
in like the parking lot.
In the parking lot. BeautyCon 2018.
BeautyCon, I love it.
That was cute because I can't remember if it was you or I that saw each other like on the list, and we were like, "Oh, well, I met you one other time. Let's hang out." And then we ended up hanging out the whole day. We met Snoop Dogg together.
Yeah.
And then I saw Gabrielle at Tom's, and like it's those reoccurring people. Like you never know the thread of connection with folks, and it's just sorry. I can there's so many things I want to say at one time, but it's just opening yourself up to people and understanding that. Also, another great thing too is maybe you don't know a person super well, but you have a budget, or you have access, or you have resources, and you say, hey, this could open doors for you. That's a great way to do something too, because that might feel like an ask, but it also can be an offer. You just have to be transparent about these things, and people will help you. Like, hey, I'm going to help you pay your rent today. Like, here, let me just pass it on. The key thing, though, is to, when you are in those positions, which you eventually will be as you progress, just with time, with access and growth and resources, is to not hold it over people's heads. It's to not do it in a way where you're trying to be transactional, where you're not trying to be like, oh, I did this for you, I'm waiting for you to do something for me in return. To just give of yourself, not expecting in return. One, it's a better way to live. You don't got to keep track of all the things you did for everybody in the world. But it's also just, it comes down to intention. Why are you doing something? Are you doing it so you can hold it over their head? Or are you doing it because it's the right thing and because you can?
Well, I think that is a great place to end today's panel.
Thank you so much to our panelists for being on here. Hopefully this will be the first of many. Everyone watching, definitely follow them and all of their endeavors. If they look up any of your names, if they don't already know you, they'll find it instantly. But, support Zolee's Grab and Go, look at Blair's amazing works, and Amanda's as well, Jaylen, Bouger Lashes, and all the amazing things that they're doing.
I do need lashes, so I'm like super excited for this because I've never done false lashes before. I have like non-existent eyelashes.
Welcome to a whole new life.
World. It's a whole new
world. Okay, thanks. I might have to FaceTime you, Jaylen, because this is gonna be like a experimentation of NASA proportions.
I got you. Give me a call. We should all go out to dinner or something.
I ain't going nowhere, but like
I'm
here.
I forgot.
I was like, go out to dinner. I love my apartment.
We can all order the same thing from Grubhub and then do a Zoom call when we're safely in our own homes.
That'd be cool.
I love
it. A Postmate Zoom call. Just
Let's do it.
Sponsored by no kidding.
Yeah, Zolee and me gonna cook. E.
Gabrielle, thank you again.
Thank you, Gabrielle.
So much for us.
In Wonder Ventures, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you everybody who was a part of this. It was nice to meet you, Blair. You're
likewise
amazing, outspoken, intelligent woman.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you all. Nice seeing you, Zolee, Amanda, Gabrielle, Blair. Nice meeting you. Bye.
Bye.